Hey everyone, it's Ariel Helwani. I'm here at the Facebook headquarters in New York City. It's my first time here. This is very cool. I've always wanted to come to Facebook. I'm an avid Facebook user, and this is actual place. Like, it's not just a website that you go on to tell everyone what your cat is doing. This is a real place with tons of smart people working here, and they're doing a lot of great things with sports, a lot of cool live things, and I'm going to start doing more on this Facebook page. So I appreciate everyone who's already liked the page with me essentially ignoring it for the last few years, but those times are changing because I'm about to do more on it. So we're going to do an impromptu live video session here. Why? Because A, I love doing live shows. B, there's a ton going on in the world of MMA, as you probably know, per usual. And C, I want to interact with all of you. I want to know what's on your mind. So let's have some questions. Ask away. Anything you want to talk about. Of course, yesterday we found out that the UFC 213 main event has changed. It's no longer Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw for the bantamweight title. It's now going to be Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko for the women's bantamweight title, but they added Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker for the interim middleweight belt. Cody Garbrandt is injured, back injury, so that fight against Dillashaw has now been put on the shelf, and they're trying to do Demetrious Johnson versus TJ Dillashaw in August, but DJ has kind of resisted that idea, so that's an interesting scenario. He wants to fight Ray Borg a little more. It's all very much in flux right now. So that's one of the stories, of course, everyone curious about Mayweather and McGregor and what's going on there. So there's a ton to talk about, and I will open the floor to all of you as you kind of trickle in and ask some questions. This is a rare opportunity to ask about anything you want, not only MMA. I'm a man of many interests. So I wonder if we have any questions. We already have questions? Is that true? Yeah. Wow. I'm blown away. You guys are so great. Okay, so this is from Don. Don asks, do you think the UFC will continue the trend of money fights over a clear road to the championship for some fighters? So I do think that they will always lean towards money fights, especially in the near future. You have to understand that wme-img bought the UFC for $4.025 billion last summer. And they didn't just, show up with a bag of cash and pay for the whole thing. There are banks involved. There are loans involved. They need to start making some money. And unfortunately for them, 2017 hasn't been the best year as far as pay-per-view is concerned. Live gates have been great. Pay-per-views, not so much. And I think that they are going to try to lean towards making the biggest money fight possible whenever they can. Titles, divisions, meritocracy be damned. And so that's why they wanted to do Bisping versus GSP. That's why they're open to doing Mayweather versus McGregor. That's why they're open to doing Dillashaw versus Demetrious Johnson. This is what they want, and you can say in the short term, that's great. It's fun to see these exciting matchups, but part of what made the UFC special, in my opinion, back in the day was we knew who the champion was. There was a clear line to get to the belt, number one contender, number two, etc. And that whole system is kind of all up in the air right now. So I'm not a huge fan of it. I do know entertainment is a big part of it as well, but I don't want them to lose the soul of what the UFC is, and that's a sport. It went from spectacle to sport, and I don't want them to go backwards. So yeah, for now, I think they will lean towards that, but at some point, I'm confident that they will right the ship. Here we go. Gene asks, who's the one fighter we should be paying attention to that no one knows about? That is a very, very good question. Okay, so there's one fighter that comes to mind right now. I think that his debut is one of the most anticipated and interesting debuts as far as professional debuts in recent memory. His name is Aaron Pico. He's a former Golden Gloves boxer. He is just 20 years old. He was this close to making the Olympic team last summer, and he would have been the first teenager to make the U.S. freestyle wrestling Olympic team in 40 years. And he's making his Bellator debut and pro debut on June 24th right here in New York at Madison Square Garden. He trains out of the American Kickboxing Academy, also trains out of California as well, and he is a prodigy. Bellator actually signed him 2 years ago and essentially just paid him monthly to be on the roster but not fight while he pursued his Olympic dream. But everyone from Daniel Cormier to Crazy Bob Cook to Cain Velasquez, all the big names at AK have told me that he is a legit prodigy. Pico the prodigy, making his debut in essentially a month from today. Yeah, today's May 24th. I'm very excited about this, and they're putting him on the pay-per-view, so that tells you how excited Bellator is about Aaron Pico's debut. So he's one to remember. Of course, in the UFC, there's Francis Ngannou. I still think Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion, as crazy as that sounds, doesn't get the attention that he deserves. And so those are two names that come to mind as far as heavyweights are concerned. And there's a guy fighting this Sunday in Sweden named Misha Serkinov, who is 4-0, I believe, in the UFC. Originally from Latvia, now trains out of Toronto. I think that he is the brightest young star in the light heavyweight division. He's fighting Volkan Ozdemir in Stockholm. That's FS1 on Sunday, so I would look out for him as well. All right, let us move along. This is Don Manos. Don gets a last name in the question as well. Will you give up on the Knicks if they lose Porzingis? Well, I appreciate this question because the Knicks are near and dear to my heart. I don't want to be one of those fans who says, oh, I give up on them, and then, 20 years later, you're back on the bandwagon when things go well. But I will say, I almost get emotional even thinking about this scenario because I am so disappointed in the state of the franchise. I never thought that I would long for the days of Isaiah Thomas, but the way Phil Jackson has completely soiled the reputation of the New York Knicks, the way Phil Jackson has treated the face of the franchise right now, Carmelo Anthony, the way he has embarrassed the star of the team, the way he has embarrassed Kristaps Porzingis, the way he has disrespected Kristaps Porzingis, he is, putting it mildly in my opinion, an egotistical, senile man who is so high on himself, who will not allow himself to change with the times, adapt to the new NBA, put the right people around him to build the right kind of team. And if you look at what other franchises who are successful are doing, it's everything that the Knicks aren't doing. Look at the Thunder. Look at the Spurs. Look at all the great teams right now. The Warriors. They do everything that the Knicks aren't doing. They adapt to their talent. They get the right kind of people for the 2017 NBA. And Phil is trying to take these great young talents and adapt them into a system that just doesn't work, the triangle. And he's alienating players, he's alienating stars, he's alienating the future of the team, and it's very disheartening. He's firing coaches, he's firing coaching members and members of the coaching staff, and it literally disgusts me. And my son, I actually bought my son, who's 4 years old, a Knicks hat, and now I feel ashamed to let him wear that hat. I hate everything that the Knicks represent. I could go on and on about this, but I won't bore you. I'm very upset with the state of the Knicks, and I'm afraid, let's not even talk about the Charles Oakley, James Dolan situation, but I'm afraid that as long as Phil Jackson is around, as long as James Dolan is around, that they will never get it right. And that's kind of sad. I will argue that I am maybe the most hard luck, worst sports fan there is living in North America right now. My baseball team doesn't exist anymore, the Montreal Expos. The Knicks are the ultimate laughingstock in sports. And my football team, the Buffalo Bills, haven't made the playoffs in the 21st century. 1999 was the last time they made the playoffs. Find me a fan out there who is a fan of three worst teams right now. I dare you to do that. I don't think it's possible. Oyuna, I hope I pronounced that correctly, asked, do you think Ronda Rousey is coming back? I don't think she's coming back in the near future. Of course, you found out that she is getting engaged to Travis Browne, so mazel tov to them on that. It just doesn't seem like she's interested. It's unfortunate. I think she would never be more popular if she came back and said, you know what, I screwed up. The way I handled the loss to Holly Holm, I want to get back on the horse. I'm going to put myself in the right situation, surround myself with the right people. I really do believe that Ronda has some more fight in her, and I do think that it would make her more popular if she humanized herself a little bit and said to the world, you know what, I make mistakes, I didn't win, but guess what? Wins and losses don't define me. It's how we come back from adversity. Unfortunately, she hasn't done that. She hasn't talked to the media since the Holly Holm fight, let alone the Amanda Nunes fight. And for whatever reason, she just doesn't want to sort of deal with the loss, digest it. And I think that's unfortunate because for me, I always seem to enjoy and respect athletes more with how they handle defeat and adversity as opposed to how they handle the good times. That's when you really see, what these men and women are all about. So, that's the way she's going to handle it, and more power to her. But for right now, I don't see her coming back anytime soon. Speaking of Ronda Rousey, here's a question about Travis Browne, her fiance. Do you think Travis Browne could beat any top 5 guy on a good day? Damn, this is from Anders. Yeah, I do. He's actually fighting Alexei Oleinik on July 8th. UFC 213. Not a top 5 guy, but I certainly believe that if he doesn't beat Oleinik, he might be in trouble as far as the UFC is concerned, given how his last fights have gone. He was actually doing pretty well against Derek Lewis in Halifax. As we saw, he hurt him. Derek actually told me on Monday, he said he had to go to the bathroom. That's why he was holding his stomach, as crazy as this may sound to people in the room who don't know what I'm talking about. But he actually broke some of his ribs when he punched him to the body. So Browne actually started off pretty well. I think the issue with Browne has been that he left Jackson's, one of the best teams in the world, and went to the Glendale Fighting Club, which unfortunately things just haven't panned out with them and MMA fighting. And so ever since he made that move, there's a clear line between the success that he had with Jackson's and then what happened to him after he left Jackson's and went to Glendale. And I think trying to go back, maybe not to Jackson's, I don't know if he'd be welcome back there, but surrounding himself around, the right coaches who will make him better, who will play to his strengths, is the smart move. So let's see what happens for this fight against Oleinik. But I think, I don't know what the odds are, but I feel like he should be favored going into that fight, although Oleinik has looked good. This is Joshua. Joshua asks, what shoes are you wearing for this super special Facebook Live event? Would you like to know, Josh? That is a great question. These are my shoes. Actually, I'm very proud about these shoes. Proud of these shoes, I should say, as I try to slip them off. So these shoes are Nike SBs. And I really love shoes. I really love Nike SBs. And actually, I was wearing these recently, and someone thought that it said Trump on the back over here. And I was like, oh my gosh, could you imagine? Maybe I should retire these. But there's a great story. Proceeds of these shoe sales went to a children's hospital in Oregon. And as you can see right over here, there's a heart. And the kids at the hospital, from what I read, actually designed the shoes, and that's why it says Thump Thump. And so I guess Nike works with this hospital in Oregon, and I love the story. I love the shoes. I love the colors. I love yellow and blue and all that stuff. So these are maybe one of my favorite SBs because of what they represent and where the proceeds went. So these are awesome. I got them from Flight Club, actually not too far from here in New York City. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Okay, we only have time for 3 more questions. I'm having a great time. And I say that sincerely, although it didn't come across that way, I think, initially. No, really, this is awesome. See, this is how I feel right now. This is it. And I urge you to give me one of these and one of these, if you'd like, if you're enjoying this. Okay, this is Daniel Kevin. He says, if you were to be in charge of the UFC, what would be the first thing you would change? Holy smokes. The first thing that came to mind, no joke, change the posters. As you've heard me talk about on my show many a time, the state of the UFC posters right now, I think is just I don't want to use the wrong word, but it's very disappointing because for me, the posters are a part of the fight. They tell a story. It's something that when I was an intern at HBO Sports, and then I went back for my senior year at HBO, they let me go into their stock room and go through all the posters, the fight posters, and I took them back to Syracuse and I put them all up on my wall. I love fight posters. These are things that you collect. It's part of the fight fan experience, and I don't understand why they've made them so cookie cutter. Of course, this is a very small thing, and if I have a job in the UFC, that's one of many things that I would suggest changing, but the fight posters would be one, and I would also change the Reebok uniforms. I know the deal's still in place, but it's one thing to sign the deal. It's one thing to allocate the money a certain way, but could we at least make the uniforms nice? I mean, that would be, I feel like, the first thing that you would want. Don't make them so generic, white, black with a stripe. Like, could we actually liven these things up? Again, going back to the posters, personality, showmanship. This is all part of the fight game. I don't want to see it get stripped of that. So I like that stuff, colorfulness and all that. So those are a couple things that come to mind. I have a feeling they're not calling me anytime soon, but you never know. Here I am in Facebook. I didn't think I'd be here a week ago. Which fighter? This is from USAD. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly, or USAID. Which fighter do you love to interview the most and why? I've been asked this question a lot, and I'm always hesitant to answer it only because I don't want to offend anyone, because one of the things that I love most about MMA, of course I love the fights, but I love how candid the fighters are. I love how open they are, how real they are, how authentic they are, and I'm a big sports fan. as you may know, and I'm always baffled by how uninteresting the athletes are in the other sports. I still eat it all up because I love the NBA, I love baseball, all that, but they don't give the reporters anything. And just look at my show on Monday with Ali Quinta and Derek Lewis and Jorge Masvidal and Tony Ferguson. I mean, they're just like, they're giving us the most interesting, fascinating, unfiltered interviews on a daily basis. So those are some names who I love to interview, of course. Back in the day, Rampage Jackson, Chael Sonnen comes to mind. None bigger than Conor McGregor. He's always been great to me and very open and authentic, dating back to our first interview. Always enjoyed interviewing Dana White. There's really, I could think more of the people I don't like to talk to than the people I like to talk to, because there's just so many who I like to talk to. The best part about covering MMA is talking to the fighters, because they're just so interesting. So those are a couple names, but I'm sure you can list off 30 more that I would agree with as well. This is the last question, unfortunately, but not forever, because I'll do this again. This is from Jordan Coffin. What advice would you have for someone who would love to become an MMA journalist? What a great way to end the stream here. So a few things that come to mind. I've been asked this before as well. Be different. Look at what everyone else is doing and try to find your own niche. Be professional. If you ever go cover an event, even a regional event, introduce yourself to everyone, from the promoter to the commissioners to the referees to the judges to the fellow journalists to the fighters. Know as many people as possible. This is what I did. This is back in 2007 when I decided I wanted to be an MMA journalist. I started my own website, and I didn't care if 10 people or 10,000 people went to the site daily. I just kind of used it as an online resume. And what I did was, back in the day, the social media platform du jour, Facebook was just starting, but the fighters weren't as active on it. So I'm sorry to say, MySpace was where all the fighters were. I know there was a thing called MySpace. You may not have heard of it, but it was a thing once upon a time. I doubt it is one anymore. And so what I would do is I would go and send 40 or so messages a day to different fighters who are on MySpace. If I got back 2 replies, 1 reply, 3 replies, awesome. And every morning I would post a different interview with a fighter. I would send them a message saying, I'd love to interview you, because that's what I love to do. I love to interview, and I always thought that I could bring something different to the table as far as interviews are concerned. And so the responses trickled in, and I would post these audio interviews, and that's how I started to gain some traction. And the great thing about MMA is the fighters are so accessible, from the creme de la creme to the up-and-comers. And now, and I'm not just saying it because I'm here, if someone asked me this on any other, forum, I would say they're all on Facebook. And so I would write to these people on Facebook. If you're interested in interviewing, this is what I would do. And you'll be surprised. You will be honestly shocked how many will write back to you and how gracious they are with their time. And, ask different questions, have different approaches, things like that, and just start building up your name. There is a shortage of good young journalists in MMA. There is a great demand for MMA content. There's a lot of great fighters out there with interesting stories. And so I would urge you, if you want to be a journalist, to just try to be different, be professional, and reach out to those fighters on Facebook, because, again, you would be shocked at how many are there. Good luck to you. All right. That's it. Nothing else? My man over here, I thought you had some questions, or were those some of yours? Okay, one. All right. Any last ones? Overtime? Yeah. Quick one. What do you got? On the spot?
What's stopping the union?
Oh man, we could go an hour on that. What is stopping the union? I think unity is stopping the union. So my man over here asked, what's stopping the fighters from unionizing? Unity is what's stopping them. You have the guys at the very top who are saying, I've been working for 10 years to get to this point, and quite frankly, no one helped me when I was a struggling fighter back in the day. So why should I help the others? And this is obviously a very short-sighted way of thinking. The young fighters just aren't kind of bold enough. Of course, they just got to the UFC. They don't want to rock the boat, so to speak. But here's what I'll say about forming an association and why I think it's important. The top guys will not lose any money. The bottom guys certainly won't. They'll only stand to gain. Let's just talk about the TV deal. The UFC's American TV deal with Fox expires in a year and a half. Right now, the fighters make 0% of that TV deal. All that money goes to the UFC, and they certainly deserve a lot of the money because they're the ones putting on the show. But just go back and look at last summer in the NBA. The salary cap jumped by, 25-30 million, and allowed the likes of Kevin Durant to join the Warriors when in a year or so prior, that couldn't happen. And why did it jump? Solely because of the revenue that trickled in from the new TV deal. The players make 50% of the TV revenue. the UFC fighters make 0% of the TV revenue. So if in a year and a half they sign this new TV deal, whether it's for $100 million a year, which it currently is, $400 million a year, which they're hoping for, if they still stick with this 0% and they don't collectively bargain and they don't come together, then I think all hope will be lost, because it's right there. They are leaving money on the table. They're not losing any money there, but for some reason they can't see, past the trees. They can't look at the entire forest. Money is being left on the table for them. They just need to kind of put their egos aside, come together. And Leslie Smith, kudos to her, actually asked Kobe Bryant at the athlete retreat this past weekend, about unionization, and Kobe put it very well. We want to kill each other on the court, but at the end of the day, we recognize that together we are stronger than if we are divided, and I think the fighters need to recognize that as well. All right, we're out of time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on my page. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the questions. Tomorrow we're back for the MMA Beat on MMAfighting.com, so don't miss that, and I'll be doing this a lot more, so stay tuned. For now, goodbye, good afternoon, good night. I'll see you later.